So it's hard to believe that I've already had this car for about 1 week, and I've come to like and dislike several things about this car. So let's not waste any time, get right into what I like and dislike about the 2023 Hyundai Ioniq 5. So I first want to start with all the likes that I've had with this car over the last few days, start with the positive benefits and aspects that I've kind of experienced around the Ioniq 5, and then we'll get into the dislikes in a few minutes. So the first thing I really like about the Ioniq 5 is the overall design aesthetic, both on the exterior as well as the interior. I think Hyundai did a fantastic job with the Ioniq 5, giving it a retro modern take. It has some very futuristic elements to it, but it also has a somewhat conservative hatchback design, which people are kind of accustomed to, used to, just on a slightly larger scale, slightly wider, slightly longer than the typical compact hot hatches of the past. So I think as a whole, Hyundai's done a great job with the design of the Ioniq 5. I'm looking forward to their future Ioniq brand products that hopefully retain a lot of the utilitarian aspects, but also giving it a modern design. Number two has to do with the seats themselves, not only the seating position, but also the seating surfaces and seating materials that they used. So if you're unaware, Hyundai uses the H-Tex leatherette seating surfaces here in the Ioniq 5 SEL, as well as the top limited trim. Now this material, as I found not only in this vehicle, but other Hyundai products as well, is extremely soft, has a lot of give to it in colder conditions, or normally just materials get a little bit stiffer. And as a whole, it's an extremely good material. I don't know the long-term durability, unfortunately, but as a whole, in terms of comfort, just the overall texture, plushness to the seats, I think Hyundai did a fantastic job choosing this material. And along with the seating surfaces and the H-Tex material itself, the seating position and the overall shape of the seats is extremely comfortable. There's plenty of leg support for your lower legs, and of course, all Ioniq 5s come standard with the power driver seat, so you can adjust the seat to kind of fit your body style and fit your comfort needs. But the seating position is extremely good combined with the forward visibility in this car. So I have the seat actually all the way down, and I have extremely good visibility out of the front end. You kind of look over the front trunk area, but as a whole, I think the forward visibility and the seating position is extremely good with the Ioniq 5, and it's one of the aspects that I found driving it made it very easy to navigate. And sticking here on the interior, my number three like is the overhead LED lighting, as well as the color ambient lighting in the door panels. Now, to get the color ambient lighting in the door panels, you do have to get the SEL trim or higher in the Ioniq 5 lineup. However, all of them will come standard with the overhead LED lighting. So combining these two is the best of both worlds. You have the color signatures on the door panel, which is customizable through the infotainment system. And then you have the bright white overhead LEDs. So when you open the door or just need to look around the cabin for something, it illuminates the entire cabin, filling every space. There's virtually no dark spots. So I think that these two are very good, and the overall interior lighting in the Ioniq 5 is top notch. Number four is the steering wheel on the Ioniq 5. Now all of them will come standard with this leather wrap steering wheel. It's only heated on the SEL trims and higher. They will have the same button layout as well as the paddles on the back to control the regen. And of course your drive mode is here in the lower left hand section. But as a whole, the steering wheel is extremely soft. The leather material that they used on it is extremely plush. It has a good amount of diameter to it, so it's easy to hold in the hand while also being a little bit on the sporty side of things. The controls are easily well laid out, and I do like the drive mode button here kind of in the lower section where you can press it with your thumb. Changes the drive mode and changes the overall dynamics of the vehicle. So as a whole, I've really enjoyed using the steering wheel. The shape is very nice. The flat bottom design kind of allows easier ingress and egress. And as a whole, just really like the steering wheel. Coming to number five, that is the interior cargo capacity and cargo volume here on the inside of the Ioniq 5. Now, if you're familiar with the Ioniq 5, then you'll know that it has a very spacious cabin, a wheelbase that's actually slightly longer than the Hyundai Palisade, which is Hyundai's largest three-row SUV, actually. And here in this SEL trim, you do not get the sliding center console, unfortunately. However, the design with the battery architecture and everything allows for a virtually flat floor. So you have open space not only between you and the passenger front seats, but you have basically a flat floor in the second row, and it's a very spacious second row at that. That also has sliding and reclining rear second row seats. So as a whole, this makes passenger volume and overall cargo area inside of the Ioniq 5 extremely large, especially for the overall footprint of this vehicle. And when you get to the trunk space, this is a more hatchback design, so it's very functional. The opening is very large, like that of a traditional hatchback. Now the glass is slanted at quite a sharp angle, so this might cut into the overall capacity just a little bit, But with these second row seats folded down, this creates a ton of cargo capacity and just a ton of room inside the Ioniq 5 for carrying just about anything you will need. So coming to number 6, it's not only a quick all-wheel drive electric vehicle, but it also has very good range. So the Ioniq 5 I've been driving is the dual motor or all-wheel drive version of this vehicle. This offers 320 horsepower, 446 pound-feet of torque combined between the two motors, paired to a 77.4 kilowatt-hour battery pack. Now, the EPA estimates the 2023 model year at 266 EPA estimated miles of range. So I found the power to be plentiful, the range to be very good, and just overall, it's a very good combination. And when you pair that too with the quick charging capabilities, that makes it even better. So coming to number 7, that is the quick charging capabilities, not only on DC fast chargers, but also AC 200 volt charging as well. So the Ioniq 5 has an onboard 10.9 kilowatt level 2 AC charger. So that means if you plug it into an appropriate AC 200 volt level 2 charger, this will get up to 10.9 kilowatts of charge, which is quite good. There's EVs coming out now that have just a slightly larger, around 11 kilowatt chargers, but compared to EVs over the past few years, the 10.9 unit on this particular vehicle is very good, allows for very quick level 2 charging, again with the appropriate equipment, wiring and stuff like that. But that really takes the toll off of needing to do DC fast charges on a daily basis, especially if you're able to install one or have that available to you in your garage. Now when it comes to DC fast charges, luckily this car is one of the fastest charging currently on the market. Now because this supports 800 volt charging architecture, you can get about 250 kilowatts on a 350 kilowatt DC fast charger. So you can reliably get, 225 to 250 on those appropriate level 3 DC fast chargers. And the fact that Hyundai made preconditioning standard for all 2023 models and retroactive to 2022 all-wheel drive Ioniq 5s, I think it makes for a very good road trip vehicle if you're considering one that's fully electric. So those are all the items that I've really come to enjoy and like about the Ioniq 5. Of course, this vehicle is feature packed, even in the base trim level, coming with Highway Drive Assist 1. The SEL and higher comes with Highway Drive Assist 2, which is Hyundai's most advanced systems that's currently available on any of their vehicles. So it offers automatic lane changes and stuff like that with the turn signals. But as a whole, I think this is a very feature-packed vehicle, and there's a lot to like. Now, unfortunately, there are some things that I found that are just clunky, hard to use on this vehicle, and definitely a few other things I just don't like in general. So let's get into those right now. So my first dislike, especially here in the cold weather, is the fact that there's no physical buttons, no shortcut buttons to turn on the heated seats or the heated steering wheel. So unfortunately, with the Ioniq 5, you have to use the infotainment to turn on the heated seats and the heated steering wheel, or you can use the voice command button here on the left side to also turn those features on. Now, luckily, there is a climate control shortcut button to that page that says warmer, and that will immediately bring up the heated seats as well as the heated steering wheel. Now, even though there is a shortcut button, when you jump in the vehicle, kind of just take off right away, it does take a second for the system to boot up to be able to show that screen so you can actually turn on the heated seats as well as the heated steering wheel. Now, under certain conditions, of course, if you activate the remote start, it will do some of that functionality for you. But if you don't use the remote start or the BlueLink app, there's just no way to quickly just press the heated seat button immediately once you get in the vehicle to get those activated. It always takes 20-30 seconds to get the heated seats and the heated steering wheel going, which to me, I would just rather have a shortcut button right next to the climate controls. Now, my second dislike also has to do with the kind of physical controls of the Ioniq 5, but this time it's for the radio, and that is the fact that there is a tune flap rather than a tune knob. Now, for some reason, Hyundai chose this asymmetrical design of having a volume knob, but having this tune flap that you kind of move up and down. Now, along with Hyundais of the past, the Ioniq 5 is not the only one to do this. It's kind of opposite of what you think. So up goes down, and when you press it down, it goes up. But it would be much easier to just have another knob over here to change these stations versus having to hit this flap up and down. Now, luckily, you can add shortcuts here on the left side of the page, but to me, it's still not good for navigating that easily. And sticking with the radio and physical controls, my third dislike with the Ioniq 5 is the fact that there's 75 volume increments. Now, with Hyundai vehicles, Sirius XM is always a little bit more dull, a little bit lower of a volume, so you're always typically going to be above like 40 just for average listening. As you can see, 34, that is like barely loud enough to be, have it while driving. But just to have 75 different increments that you can change the number to just seems quite strange, and to me, you don't need any more than 50. So my fourth dislike is the fact that the battery preconditioning implementation here on this vehicle is quite clunky and quite hard to use. So if you're familiar with how to use the preconditioning system here on this Ioniq 5, I actually have a dedicated video here on the channel covering that, then you'll know you have to use it a specific way to get the battery preconditioning system to actually function on the Ioniq 5, and that is through the main navigation head unit with the built-in software on this vehicle. Now you can't simply input your final destination, say you want to travel to New York City, and then along the route it will calculate and automatically activate the preconditioning system in this vehicle, but you have to manually go in, set points of interest from the built-in navigation system at these chargers that you plan to stop with, and then within about 30 minutes or 30 miles of that charging station, if the temperature is cold enough and the battery pack is cold enough, it will then optimize and heat up the battery for faster DC charging. So just the fact that you have to manually input these points of interest along your route into the navigation system to get the preconditioning system to work, to me is a very clunky implementation. People might find this a little bit hard to use, especially if they're coming from a vehicle like a Tesla or that has this feature built in. So all in all, I think they need a better route planner that kind of plans your stops, automatically preconditions the battery system for optimal DC charging if needed, and as a whole, just fix that system, make it a little bit easier to use. So number 5 is the fact that there's no rear wiper on the back of the Ioniq 5. So for some reason, Hyundai chose not to add a rear wiper on the back of this vehicle. Now I saw at the launch of this vehicle, they said that the aerodynamics designed up in the rear spoiler should create enough airflow over the glass to kind of clear it on its own, especially if it's a liquid or something like that. Now you can, of course, you can always add a Rain-X or rain repellent type to the glass itself to kind of help with the airflow, moving the rain off the windshield. But what if it snows? What if there's ice, stuff like that, to where you only can rely on the rear defrost, and then it gets really dirty and there's no way to kind of wash it and then clean it with a rear wiper like you normally would find on an SUV or a hatchback. So to me, this is something that I would really like to see Hyundai add, if possible, on a refresh version of the Ioniq 5. And there's been a lot of owners out there that I've seen have complained, even talked to one in person that complained about it, and I didn't even bring it up. So I think the fact that a rear wiper is missing on this car is really something that I've grown to dislike, especially because I drive a hatchback myself with one. So number 6 is the charge port location. So if you guys are familiar with EVs, then you'll know the charge port door location, or just the charge port location on the vehicle, varies greatly, especially among CCS vehicles. Now Tesla, of course, has always implemented on the driver's side rear, kind of around the taillight assembly on their vehicles. So whenever they're charging at public chargers, you'll see that they're always backed in and always in the same orientation. Now when it comes to these vehicles from other manufacturers, well, it varies greatly depending on where they want to put the charge port. So here on the Ioniq 5, it's located on the passenger side rear, which is also true for the other eGMP platform vehicles from Hyundai Kia. So it's located right here, kind of opposite of where the Tesla would normally be located. Now my biggest complaint as far as the location of the charge port on this vehicle goes is the fact that it's not standardized across other electric vehicles. Now Tesla, of course, their own brand, has kind of standardized it themselves, but as far as like Rivian, Ford, the Ioniq 5, other EV manufacturers have kind of just put it wherever, and they're almost all different depending on the vehicle. You know, I would personally rather like to see it in the nose or on the driver's side front fender of the vehicle, or just in front of the front doors in general, because this would make it so you can pull up to many public charging stations and wouldn't need to back in. Now backing in is not a huge deal for many people, but it might take a little bit longer. They might need to reposition the vehicle depending on which charger they're using. But in terms of our specific garage layout, that far back corner, the passenger side rear, is actually the farthest position away on the vehicle itself to where our level 2 charger would be mounted, because of kind of our restrictions in where we can actually position the level 2 and where we can run the wiring inside the garage walls. And speaking of the charge port, my number 7 dislike is the fact that you cannot disable or change the settings for the charge indicator lights next to the charge port. Now, if you own an Ioniq 5, Kia EV6, or maybe GV60 as well, then you'll know that you cannot change the indicator lights next to the charge port itself. So once you plug the vehicle in, it starts charging, it starts flashing, and then of course when it gets full, it stays solid, and I believe it will eventually shut off if it's full. But if you're using 120 volt charging like I've experienced, especially if you're charging it outdoors, this may draw unnecessary attention to the vehicle, especially because these are bright white LEDs. They illuminate quite brightly. So there's just no way to dim them, no way to change the settings as far as illuminating. And I think if you're just charging outdoors in general at night, this can draw unwanted attention to your vehicle. Now my number 8 dislike has to do with the multi-reflector LED headlights on the SE as well as the SEL trim. Now I'm going to have a separate dedicated video going over the entire lighting package on this particular SEL Ioniq 5, so make sure to check that out if you're interested. But as far as the headlights specifically go on this exact vehicle, I felt like the beam pattern was not aimed particularly well, especially with the reflector headlights. Now, if you're familiar with the Ioniq 5, then you'll know it comes with two different versions, a reflector and a projector setup. Now, the projector is going to have a super sharp cutoff, and as typical of projectors in general, where the reflector might not have as sharp of a cutoff. Now, I found that the output is decent in this vehicle. However, the glare for oncoming drivers seems to be excessive and was actually measured a little bit above the thresholds that they have for the IIHS. So these headlights do produce a little bit of an excessive glare according to the IIHS, and I've experienced it myself where it just seems like the beam pattern and the overall output pattern is just not ideal, and it also has a few dark spots as well. So I'm not a huge fan of the reflector setup on this Ioniq 5. I would probably rather have the projectors, which they were actually standard on the SEL for 2022. So that's going to do it for all my likes and dislikes on the 2023 Hyundai Ioniq 5 SEL all-wheel drive. Hopefully you guys have enjoyed this video and found some of the information helpful. Now, if you guys also own this vehicle, let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below about likes and dislikes. Do you agree or disagree with anything I mentioned in this video? And if you have any other things to add, make sure to feel free to leave that in the comments. Help some people out that might be interested in purchasing the Ioniq 5 for themselves. Now, even with my list of dislikes, I really have enjoyed driving this vehicle. It's definitely kind of opened my eyes and opinions about electric vehicles. So if you guys enjoyed this video and found it helpful, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe if you guys are not already subscribed, and check out some of the other content I have in this series around this exact Ioniq 5. Like I said, I've really enjoyed it. So make sure to check out some of the other videos I have here with the Ioniq 5. And with all that being said, hope to see you guys in the next one.